Myra's first lie was for her own heart. She told it quietly to the mirror as she shrank her silhouette, blurred the bioluminescent lines on her skin, and practiced smiling in the easy, human way. Her people had always expected their queens to be inscrutable symbols, not seekers. But when the Selnari Council learned she was carrying a half-human child, tradition shattered into fear. "Your blood is not a bridge," her chief advisor pleaded, voice cold with ancient protocol. "A queen's heir must be pure, or the dynastic mark will flicker out, and with it, the old treaties. A child is a threat. Hide her, or we will be forced to." Myra had seen the fury in the court's eyes, felt it pulse and ricochet off the walls of her ancient palace. Word traveled faster than any stellar communique. The queen had consorted with Thomas Greaves, the charismatic human negotiator who'd crossed every diplomatic barrier, until, with a smile, he destroyed the most sacred one. There would be no negotiation for her child, no compromise of heritage. Rather than submit to council exile, or worse, Myra triggered her own disappearance. In the dead of night, she copied all her medical files to a secure genetic vault, hacked a merchant's shipping record for safe passage, and walked away from the palace wrapped in a hooded cloak stitched with light-bending nanofiber. Her only keepsake was an encrypted holochip from Thomas. "Find me if you can. I'll wait in the only place we can be ordinary." The escape through Selnari sector went unnoticed. She stripped her vowels of their lilting syllables, mimicked a trade accent, signed on as Mirren Starr, a refugee data analyst, tired and new in the vast, breathing chaos of Saul's largest city. Every morning, as she slipped through crowded terminals and airlocks, Myra reminded herself, fugitive, not queen, pregnant, not precious. Humanity, it turned out, was welcoming on the surface, merciless underneath. Officials processed her citizenship with machine efficiency, detailing jobs, gene scans, rent policies, and mandatory health reviews. She searched database after database for Thomas, his name gone, but his signature appeared in tiny clues. A bakery account flagged for odd transactions. A datapad receipt signed TG, a coded phrase in repair shop graffiti that made her smile for the first time in weeks. Her own disguise was always under threat. Human makeup dulled Selnari iridescence. Cheap sunglasses hid the luminous flash in her eyes. She wore oversized coats to mask her widening waist, gloves to hide faint, glowing fingertips, and said migraine whenever a neighbor squinted curiously at her half-drawn curtains. At night, she dreamed of home, not the court and its ceremonial corridors, but the feeling of belonging. She wondered what kind of child she would raise in a world so broken by suspicion and so tired of difference. Her pregnancy became a master class in secrecy. Each day, Myra limped a new weakness, faked paperwork for third-rate clinics, and learned to barter privacy for silence fixing broken coms or patching hoverbikes in exchange for a neighbor's discretion. She avoided public health scanners, bribed a local medic to fudge prenatal checkups, and never registered her true genome. The city's noise was both danger and camouflage. Human kindness arrived in unlikely forms. An old woman who lent fresh bread and never asked a question. A janitor who watched the hall and mailed her every rumor of Selnari patrols on Sol. A child, probably half cybernetic, taught Myra how to string energy converters together as toys and drew bright, uncanny glyphs on Myra's apartment door. "For luck," the child whispered, solemn as priesthood. As her due date neared, fear spiked. Any medical emergency could expose her. Any unsympathetic neighbor, any careless word from her, everything was risk. She practiced breathing techniques so her native accent wouldn't slip during pain. Tested old Selnari lullabies against the hiss of air recyclers. At least a dozen times, she prepared a go bag, ready to disappear once more. When labor began, Myra faced it alone. By then she'd learned to mute her body's bioluminescence, transforming screams into shivers. On a rainy morning, when city alarms had chased everyone indoors, she birthed the sun in the shadowed quiet of her low-rent room. He was more human than alien, save for the slight sheen on his eyelids and the curious strength in his tiny grip. Myra whispered his name Leo into the hush, a word that meant both lion and light. Both of his parents' languages fused. The exhaustion after birth was terrifying visions of the council's agents tracking heartbeat patterns and genome signatures. But against dread, hope kindled. If she could survive, If Leo could grow strong in human light, maybe things would be different. Maybe someday she could send word to Thomas, or he would find them ordinary, hidden, safe. In the days that followed, Myra built a life around invisibility. Each step, each small contact, was a negotiation between past and future, safety and truth. But each night, with Leo sleeping beside her, she was more than queen or fugitive or liar. She was simply a mother willing to lose everything she had ever been, so her child could inherit the freedom of two worlds. As the city's neon pulse swelled and faded, Mira prepared for whatever came next, to be discovered, to be forgiven, or simply to survive, a legend unmade, a new story waiting to begin. Single motherhood in hiding meant Myra lived on the knife edge between dread and monotony. By day, she worked in a refurbished tech shop, blending her alien expertise into lucky guesses that made digital junkers run and cheap gadgets outperform their schematics. Her boss, a wiry woman named Trina, kept to herself happy enough for Myra's steady hands and content to mind her own business as long as repairs came in on time. The shop proved the ideal front, always busy, never personal. Leo grew quickly. He was quiet as an infant, but when he began to toddle, every day brought new challenges. His eyes lingered too long on blinking lights, sometimes flaring with a telltale glint that Mira's heart learned to fear. When he laughed, it echoed with an undertone that made human children pause and giggle just to match him. At home, Mira coached him carefully. "Don't let the silver show," she whispered at bedtime, tracing gentle lines along his temple. The world pressed in. Mandated city checks crept closer to their district, targeting undocumented families and collecting DNA samples in the guise of public health. Mira bought black market medications, synthesizing compounds to keep Leo's Selnari side dormant when needed, though she ached at how much of himself she was forced to erase. Despite vigilance, suspicion loomed. The neighbor doctor, Mrs. Yun, noticed how quickly Leo bounced back from illness. "He's resilient," she remarked, eyebrows knit, "and his eyes, are those lenses?" I'd never seen a child's cornea catch starlight before. Myra played it off with a joke, making herself laugh a split second later than she should have, and quickly changed the subject. She trusted Mrs. Yun, but trust could not justify endangering her son. Afterward, she redoubled Leo's lessons. When people notice, just blink and look away, or smile and say you're sleepy. Outside threats were less subtle. Reports on the CityNet detailed sightings of off-worlder trackers in the port districts. Mira recognized the tactics: vanishing shipments, casual break-ins in suspected hideouts, coded messages painted in Selnari script along old tunnels. The bounty for her child's return alive grew with every new city crackdown. Sometimes at night, boot steps in the hallway sent Mira into panic, clutching Leo close while counting down until the danger passed. Yet, amid fear, hints of belonging emerged. Leo gained a reputation for kindness. He shared toys, patched scraped elbows, and listened more than he spoke. Trina's niece insisted, "He's weird, but good weird," and became his first friend. The two built a small code of loyalty: never tattle, and always split your snack. Mira watched them play, a tangle of curls and silver glints, and felt just barely a future where he could belong. Meanwhile, Myra searched for Thomas with increasing resolve. She tapped old contacts, left coded messages at the bakery and in city sound channels, used her work credentials to watch for evidence of his presence in customs logs. Leaving her son, even for an hour, felt like treason, but she had to try for Leo, for herself. For the question that haunted her heartbeat: had he truly survived, or would Mira raise their child alone forever? One rainy night, as neon turned the gutters to rivers of shifting color, Myra found the sign she'd waited for: an empty pastry box with the word lion traced in the same familiar hand. She shook, breathless, recognizing Thomas's code. The next day, a man in a battered coat lingered too long outside the tech shop, a human profile, face in shadow. He slipped her a data chip during a staged checkout, voice barely above traffic noise. "It's not safe, but it's not over. I'm still nearby. You're both safer if you stay hidden for a little while longer. They're searching harder. I promise I'll find you." After he left, Myra's hands trembled as she decrypted the tiny file. A recording, Leo's first cry, remixed with Thomas's voice. "He laughs like you. Tell him the world was worth running for. Hope cut through exhaustion. That night, she told Leo stories about fathers who moved stars and mothers who made worlds safe with love and trickery. She promised him adventure, not exile. Family, not secrecy dreams she dared not voice during the day. But not all stories could end safely. On the edge of sleep, Mira glimpsed movement in the alley outside two Selnari hunters. Unmistakable, even in civilian garb, scanning doorways with neural lenses. She slid the bolt on the door and drew Leo close, heart racing, whispering old Selnari phrases of protection beneath her breath. Soon, she knew, they would have to run again or stand and fight for what they had found together. The city could never be trusted, but in its cacophony, Mira and Leo had learned how to hide hope, and if pressed, how to let it burn. The city had taught Mira one truth above all. Safety was never in a place, but in movement. When she saw the Selnari hunters scanning the district, their neural lenses flickering with biometric sweeps, she knew the apartment was compromised. She didn't wait. That night, under the cover of a power outage, she triggered remotely. She bundled Leo into a worn coat, slipped the emergency bag over her shoulder, and led him through the building's forgotten service tunnels routes she'd mapped during her first weeks in hiding. They moved in silence, Leo's small hand gripping hers, his breath steady despite the fear in his eyes. Myra had trained him well. No questions, no noise, trust only Mama. They surfaced near a derelict transit hub where Trina waited beside a rusted maintenance van, face tight with worry. "They're checking IDs at the checkpoints," she said. "Said they're hunting a genetic anomaly. I don't know how much they know." Myra nodded, her voice low. "We'll stay at the old port safe house. No network, no logs, just walls and time." The safe house was a forgotten storage unit beneath a decommissioned cargo terminal, cold, dim, but secure. Myra sealed the door with a magnetic lock and activated a signal dampener to block external scans. She set up a rotating watch schedule, scanning for Selnari pulses and CityNet alerts. Every sound outside, the groan of metal, the distant hum of hover traffic, made her tense. Leo, though, saw adventure. He drew constellations on the floor with chalk, naming them after the stories Mira had told him. "That's the lion," he whispered, pointing to a cluster. "And that's the queen who ran away to save her cub." Mira smiled, heart aching. He didn't know he was the lion. He didn't know she was the queen. But the truth pressed in. On the third night, Mira's scanner picked up a coded pulse Selnari origin, encrypted with a high-level clearance key. She decrypted it slowly, fingers trembling. It was a bounty update. Target, female Selnari. Codename Niran Star. Offspring. Hybrid, age 8 months. Silver eyes. Bioluminescent markers. Reward, 500,000 credits. Alive, unharmed. Do not engage without backup. The number was staggering. The order, chilling. They weren't just hunting her. They were preserving Leo. For what? Study? Display? A political weapon? Mira deleted the message, wiped the logs, and held Leo closer that night, whispering old Selnari lullabies until his breathing slowed. She had run from a throne, but she would not run from being a mother. Trina visited every other day, bringing food, news, and a quiet strength that kept Mira from breaking. "You're not the only one hiding," she admitted one evening, pulling a small, glowing coin from her pocket. "My grandmother was Selnari. She fled the same war you're running from. I kept this, never knew why, until now." Myra stared at the coin, its runes pulsing faintly. "You're one of us?" "Half," Trina said with a shrug, "and proud of it. But I learned to hide. You don't have to. Not forever." The words settled deep. Mira had spent months teaching Leo to be small, to be quiet, to erase himself. But what if he didn't have to? What if, instead of running, they could stand? That night, she risked a single transmission routed through 3 proxy nodes, encrypted with a Selnari royal cipher only Thomas would recognize. "I'm still here. Leo is strong. They're hunting us. If you're out there, find us. Not for me. For him." She sent it and waited, heart pounding. 47 hours later, a signal returned. Not a message, just a location pin. A derelict bakery on Elm Street, coordinates blinking once and vanishing. But Myra knew. That was the place Thomas had mentioned in his first note. The place where ordinary people waited. Hope, sharp and dangerous, flared in her chest. He was alive. He was close. She looked at Leo, asleep on a cot, one hand curled around the Salnara coin Trina had given him. His eyelids shimmered faintly in the dark, a secret the world wasn't ready for. Mira made her decision. They wouldn't run forever. If Thomas was near, if dissenters in the Salnari Corp were rising, then maybe, just maybe, they could stop hiding and start fighting, not with weapons, but with truth. The next morning, she began preparing, not to flee. To be found, Mira waited 3 days before approaching the bakery. She studied the block from every angle: cameras, patrol routes, escape paths. The building was a crumbling relic, its windows boarded, its sign faded to ghost letters, Starlight Breads. But the door was unlocked, and inside, the scent of old flour and yeast lingered like memory. She brought Leo, holding his hand tightly, his small fingers clutching the Salnari coin. "Stay close," she whispered, "and if you see anything bright, look at me first." The interior was dim, lit only by cracks in the ceiling. Dust swirled in the air. Then, from the back room, a shadow moved. Thomas stepped into the light. He looked older, lines carved by worry, hair streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same. Warm, steady, human. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mira stepped forward, and he opened his arms. They held each other like survivors. Leo, wide-eyed, pressed against Mira's leg, staring at the man who shared his face. "You're real," Mira whispered. "I thought I'd lost you." "I never stopped looking," Thomas said, voice thick. "I stayed off-grid, moved every few weeks. I knew they'd use me to find you, but I left signs just in case." He knelt, slowly, so as not to startle. "Hey, Leo," he said, smiling. "I've heard so much about you." Leo didn't speak, but he didn't pull away. He reached out, touched Thomas's hand, then looked up at Mira. "He feels like you," he said. Mira laughed, tears in her eyes. "He does." They stayed in the bakery for hours, talking in hushed tones. Thomas had gathered intelligence Salnari bounty networks, human collaborators, even a list of dissenters within the Salnari Council who opposed the hunt. "There's a faction," he said. "They call themselves the Veil. They believe hybridity isn't a threat, it's evolution. They've been feeding me intel, hoping we'd surface." Myra listened, heart pounding. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the beginning of a fight. They couldn't stay. The bakery was exposed, and Myra's instincts screamed that time was short. But before they left, Thomas handed her a data chip. "Everything I've collected. Locations, names, encrypted comms. If we're going to stop running, we'll need proof, something that forces the council to listen." Mira took it, her resolve hardening. "Then we stop hiding, not all at once, but we start making ourselves seen." They returned to the safe house, where Trina greeted them with cautious joy. "So he's real," she said, eyeing Thomas. "And he brought a war." "Not a war," Myra corrected. "A reckoning." Over the next week, they planned. Mira used her old royal access codes still active in dormant systems to plant misinformation, leading hunters on false trails. Thomas reached out to the Veil, confirming their support. And Leo, unaware of the stakes, began to thrive, asking questions, laughing louder, even letting his eyes glow when he was excited. Then, the first real test came. A Salnari hunter, disguised as a city inspector, arrived at the safe house door, scanner in hand. "Routine check," he said, voice smooth. "Need to verify residency and health records." Myra's blood ran cold, but she didn't panic. She opened the door, smiled politely, and handed over forged papers. "We're just passing through," she said. "My son's recovering from a fever. Doctor's orders minimal contact." The hunter scanned the documents, then glanced at Leo. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, and Leo, without thinking, smiled. The hunter froze. His scanner beeped. Mira moved fast. She stepped in front of Leo, blocking the scan. "He's shy," she said, "and tired. We'll be gone by morning." The hunter hesitated, then nodded. "Next inspection will be unannounced." After he left, Mira locked the door, heart racing. They had been seen. The hunt would intensify. But as she looked at Leo, at Thomas, at Trina, who had already started packing the emergency bag, she didn't feel fear. She felt ready. That night, she made a decision. We go public. Not with a broadcast, with a story. We show them who Leo is, not a prize, not a threat, but a child. And we let the world decide if he deserves to be hunted. Thomas squeezed her hand. "Then we'll make sure the world sees the truth." And for the first time since she left her throne, Mira felt like a queen, again, not because of power, but because of purpose. Mira knew the moment had come. The hunter's visit had changed everything, proof that the Salnari network was tightening, that Leo's exposure was no longer a risk, but a certainty. Hiding would only delay the inevitable. If they were going to survive, they had to stop being ghosts. "We go public," she said, standing in the dim light of the safe house. "Not through official channels. They'll censor us, discredit us. We use the city's open net, the underground feeds, the story streams. The places people go when they want truth, not permission." Thomas nodded. "We show Leo, not as a weapon, not as a secret, as a child, with a mother, with a father, with a story." Trina, ever practical, padded, "And we leak the bounty files, the Veil's intel, the council's orders. Let the public see who's really hunting him." They worked fast. Mira recorded a message in both Salnari and human tongues, her voice calm, regal, unafraid. She spoke of love, of exile, of a child born not from war, but from hope. She showed footage of Leo laughing, drawing, holding his parents' hands. "This is my son," she said. "His name is Leo. He is half Salnari, half human. He is not a threat. He is a future." Thomas compiled the data bounty records, encrypted orders, proof of Salnari infiltration into human systems. Trina used her network to distribute the files across independent platforms, tagging them with keywords that would make them impossible to ignore. Hashtag hybrid child, hashtag hunted for love, hashtag queen in hiding. They scheduled the release for midnight. When the broadcast went live, the city stirred. First, a ripple, curious clicks, shared links, skeptical comments. Then, a wave. News outlets picked it up. Human rights groups demanded answers. Salnari dissidents in the diaspora began speaking out. By dawn, the story was everywhere. And then, the backlash. The Salnari Council responded fast. A formal statement declared Mira a traitor, her child an illegal genetic experiment, the broadcast an act of sedition. Bounty hunters were ordered to escalate. Human collaborators, agents embedded in city security, were activated, searching for the source of the leak. But something unexpected happened. People fought back. Ordinary citizens, humans, hybrids, even some pure-blood Salnari began protecting Mira's story. They mirrored the files, encrypted them, spread them through mesh networks. A graffiti campaign bloomed overnight. "Leo is not a crime," painted on walls, projected onto towers, stitched into protest banners. At a public square, a crowd gathered not with weapons, but with candles, holding photos of Leo, chanting his name. A human doctor stepped forward and declared, "I treated him. He's just a boy." A Salnari elder, face lined with age, said, "We once believed stars could not share light. We were wrong." Myra watched from the safe house, tears streaming. "They're seeing him." Thomas held her. "They're seeing us." But the danger was real. That night, 3 hunters breached the district. Trina's network alerted them in time. They fled again, but this time, not alone. A group of citizens, armed with nothing but flashlights and courage, formed a shield around them, slowing the hunters long enough for escape. They reached a new hideout, an old school turned community center, run by a coalition of refugees. The leader, a woman with cybernetic eyes and a voice like thunder, said, "You're not hiding here. You're rising." Myra looked at Leo, asleep in her arms, his silver eyes closed in peace. She whispered, "We're not running anymore." And for the first time, she believed it. The fight wasn't over. The council still hunted. The world still feared what it didn't understand. But now, they had something stronger than fear. They had witnesses. The city held its breath. Myra's broadcast had ignited a fire no decree could extinguish. Protests spread across Seoul and into Salnari colonies. The Veil's members, once silent, stepped forward, scientists, elders, even a counselor who had once voted for the bounty. "We were wrong," she declared on open comms. "The future is not purity. It is connection." The Salnari Council, cornered, called for a public trial, not in their capital, but on neutral ground, the diplomatic spire above Saul's atmosphere. Mira was summoned. So was Leo. So was Thomas. They went not as fugitives, but as witnesses. The spire was a ring of glass and steel, suspended between worlds. Delegates from a dozen species filled the tiers. Cameras broadcast to billions. At the center stood the Selnari High Council, robed in starlight fabric, faces unreadable. Mira entered first, Leo's hand in hers, Thomas at her side. She wore no disguise. Her skin shimmered faintly. Her eyes glowed with quiet pride. Leo, dressed in a simple tunic, looked around with curiosity, not fear. The council's lead speaker, Elder Vex, began coldly. You violated the genetic purity accord. You concealed a hybrid heir. You incited rebellion. How do you answer? Myra stepped forward, voice clear. I answer with my son. Leo is not a violation. He is a choice. A choice to love beyond borders, to build something new. You call it rebellion. I call it evolution. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Thomas spoke next. I am human. I love Myra. I love Leo. If loving across species is a crime, then charge us all. But know this, your fear built this trial. Our hope built a movement. Then Leo stepped forward. No one expected it. The chamber fell silent. He looked at the council, small but unafraid. I'm not bad, he said, voice soft but carrying. I just want to go to school and play and have a dad. A hush. Then, from the human delegates, a single clap, then another, then a wave of applause, spreading like light through darkness. Elder Vex hesitated. The law was clear, but the world was watching. The verdict came at dawn. The council could not deny the evidence, the public outcry, the dissent within their own ranks. They could not erase what billions had already seen. Myra of the Selnari, Elder Vex intoned, you are stripped of royal title, but your exile is lifted. Your son, Leo Greaves, is recognized as a citizen of both Selnari and human space, protected under the new accord of shared lineage. The chamber erupted. Myra did not cheer. She knelt, pulled Leo into her arms, and held him close. Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder, tears in his eyes. They had won, not with war, not with violence, with truth. In the weeks that followed, life changed. The bounty was voided. The hunters disbanded or defected. The Veil became an official council branch, dedicated to hybrid rights and interstellar kinship. Mira and Thomas found a small house on the edge of the city, near a school, a park, a community garden. Leo enrolled in first grade. On his first day, he wore a backpack with a lion patch and a Solnari coin pinned to his shirt. He made friends fast. Myra still woke some nights in panic, listening for footsteps. But each morning, she saw Leo run to the door, laughing, ready for the world. One evening, as the twin suns set, Thomas found her on the porch, watching the sky. We did it, he said. She smiled. We're just beginning, because Leo was growing. And with him, a new future one, where love was not a secret, but a standard. And somewhere, in classrooms and homes and quiet streets, children like him would no longer hide. They would shine.